mean, within the creation story, we hear of the entities that separated from the one, and of course, we don't know how the universe was created, how life was created. We have the chaos theory, or we have the theory with faith. That I believe has been rewritten many times over for us to believe in a very sanitized story of how it was. Now, one of those energies that separate from source through the one trying to understand more about itself, I believe that we're extensions of the one that are creating. We're creating memories, we're exploring these memories, these experiences, perhaps to expand upon the creation process when we return back to the other side, because the one, as we understand, if we're to believe that or understand that, which I kind of do, is trying to explore more about itself through us, an extension of itself. But something happened when the goddess Sophia descended and created matter, and of course drew a lot of the antimatter towards her. And this is where the Archons came in. And what Sophia did was then create the blueprint of the human, which was far different from the Archon. Now, what's interesting about this, good and bad, it is prevalent. It is here. It hangs in the balance with every single one of us. We're a composite of good and bad, or good and evil, so to speak. And people say, but it is true, and trying to counterbalance that energy. But there seems to have been another force, the archonic force, the archons that were created. And it's possible because we are part of divinity, because we are part of love, because we are part of expression, of creation, of all these things that as a human, we are remarkable. We're absolutely incredible beings. This is another thing that the system does not want us to understand, that this here and that there, called the heart and the mind, and I'm talking about the spiritual heart, the love heart, and also the mind, can create the most incredible things. But this force seems to be denied of that. Whatever's happened, there has been a descent or fall with regards to these beings, whatever they are, and they are wanting that part of us that they have been denied, that they don't have. Now, this also brings into the equation of the creation story with regards to extraterrestrials, as we call them, gods that had created man. Now, think of this. Man rebelled because we were created as slaves. And I always joke, and I've said this many times before, nothing as much has changed today, because human beings are still the serving force to apparently the humankind, not alien kind now. And you hear about the deluge to try and wipe out this creation that the gods had made, and leaving Noah, which was one of the hybrids or the half-breeds towards these extraterrestrial intelligences from the past that we knew as gods. And of course, life began again. And then we get to the point of like these masters coming in, like Christ, Muhammad, all these elevated masters that came to try and warn us, to tell us that we are not just biological automatons, that we have what they call a solar spirit, and we survive, we transcend that state called death. And of course, just taking an example here, without getting too involved with the religious ideologies, because people have their own beliefs, but one of them, Jesus of Nazareth, and he actually was hated by the establishments, and of course because he was involved in secrets of the mind, of the betterment of our species that the system couldn't have. So I believe that, the ultimate agenda is that this force can't have what we have. And whether or not there is some kind of envy or wanting it and utilizing every method within its means to find what that is. If we go back to the Greys, when they abduct someone, they are searching, they're making a psychic connection with the individual. They're able to read our minds. So they are much smarter than we are. They know what we're about, but it's almost as if they can't get what they want. I mean, through the reproductive processes as well, too, have they been trying to replicate a new species whereby, and as I said within my theoretical research, Spirits in a Material World, that was published back in 1996, are they wanting to try and create a half-breed, a hybrid they call it, in terms of infusing their part of what they are with us in the hope of slingshotting them back, or recreating a new version of themselves that has what we have in terms of this mutation, or this reconnection of the genetic material, astral material, whatever you want to call it. To them, when we're brought into their full frequency awareness, they unite with that spark of consciousness, the soul, the spirit, which is not physical in nature. So one wonders whether or not now, because it can't get that, it's moved forward. And the Greys, unfortunately, through their creation, have been denied that right of individuality, which the system is fears and does not want. Now, interesting, going back to the creation of the original models of man, it went through varied mutations, of course, like anything. Like us scientists, if they started developing humans, cloning them, I'm sure they've done that. Now, originally, the gods created the Adam, the Adama, and of course Eve, but the Adama that was not meant to reproduce. Now, just take that, it was not meant to reproduce. So it would be a workforce that would be created and then die. But genetically, as we understand it, they were allowed to reproduce, and this became a problem. Now, what's to say that those gods that had created these models of man that wasn't able to reproduce, and whether or not the gods themselves could get up to, no good and reproduce themselves is questionable. But if they have come from, if they're able to decide whether or not their creation can reproduce or not, think about this. If these gods had been in another system, let's say they had created the Greys, they had created this species, just another thought here, just another idea. I know it's wild and wacky, but let's just say that these gods, before they created man, had created another species, the Greys, that could not reproduce. And then they come to this world, and then they create man, fusion of them and a hominid, the ape. This is why I believe that there are connections to be made with the mammal and with us being spiritual, because we're on terra firma, we're on Earth, we're in this plane, this reality. Now, those beings that they had manufactured, it's a bit like Prometheus. I thought about this. They've come towards a world, trying to find their creators, and then finding us and thinking, hang on a minute, we're denied the right to reproduce. We're in spiritual stagnation. We can't go anywhere. But they've created, there's something new here, a new model. And maybe this new model will afford us some understanding of what we are, where we come from through this. So it's kind of like, we can take it in varied areas. But a lot of this does stem back to antediluvian times. And this is what the system we serve is so adamant in covering. And also take on this. Every epoch, Atlantis, Lumari, whatever, always a wall of denial. No, it couldn't possibly exist. We're just going through another phase that's going round in a circle, and anything within the past must be scrubbed out. Any scientific information that countermands the official narrative must be challenged and brought into line. So we can clearly see that there is an agenda, and that this is not just decompartmentalized into separate areas. I think there's a whole lot, a chunk, that when you start putting the dots together, you start to see a very disturbing picture about what could possibly be the intentions of this ultra-terrestrial, extraterrestrial, non-human entities agenda. Do you understand? So there we are.